Good evening and welcome to another edition of Fact Sheet. Here we talk about the facts and nothing but the fact. If it's not a fact, we don't discuss them. Tonight we have a very important issue to talk about, and it has to do with the release of the CDD's pre-election survey, which they conducted somewhere last week. This report has gotten Ghanaians talking. We've been talking because there are a lot of issues that have been highlighted in that report which the CDD released. Tonight we want to understand the facts behind the data. Tonight we want to see the personification of the data which the CDD presented. Tonight we want to understand some of the terminologies and terms that the statisticians have been using, for instance, the sample size and all, because there's been a lot of debate about how a population of about 30 million would have a sample size of, let's say, 2,400. Is it a size that one can use to actually make a pronouncement on the direction that people will be going in terms of Ghana and the issues that the CDD raised in this report? That's the focus of our conversation this evening. If you have read a copy of that report, it focuses attention on issues to do with the performance of the present administration, which is the MPP. It talks about the upcoming elections and the expectations of Ghanaians and the confidence level they repose in certain key institutions who are going to play a major role in the elections. Issues about electoral violence and vigilantism, the report captures that as well. It talks about the direction of the economy and the country. It talks about the issues to do with the electorate and the willingness to participate in the election in the first place. The execution of their mandate as citizens of this country. All these issues are highlighted in that report. Issues to do with vote buying, issues to do with voter apathy. All these issues are captured in that report. And so tonight, we'll seek to understand the issues behind the CDD's report. If you've been following the CDD, it was in 2016 that they came out with their first pre-election survey report, which Ghanaians interrogated in 2016. They did one in July, and then one around the same time in 2016, around October, they did another one. And so this year, they have done another one, which we're going to interrogate this evening on the fact sheet. My name is Samuel Ishen, and I welcome you to the show this evening. Tonight, I have my guests join me to interrogate these issues and to understand them. At the end of the day, we'll have a better appreciation of the issues captured by the CDD. For now, we'll take a breather, and we'll come back. I will introduce to you my guests. I will interrogate the issues. Welcome back. This is Fact Sheet. My name is Samuel Ishen, and tonight we're discussing the pre-election survey of the CDD. And my guests are here with me to do justice to the issues. Dr. Louise Asiedu is my guest this evening. He is a senior lecturer, Department of Statistics and Actuarial Science, University of Ghana, Legon, and Guilford Boatin Asiama. He's a research analyst at the Ghana Center for Democratic Development, CDD, Accra, Ghana. They are helping me to discuss the issues. So, since Guilford is here, I will start with him because they put out this data which we've been talking about for almost about a week now, when the CDD made their research findings public for the media to interrogate. Guilford, good evening. Doc, good evening. All right, so I'll start with you to understand the reasoning behind the pre-election survey. You started in 2016. What informed the decision to, embark on this project?
Thank you very much. CDD Ghana, as you stated, we've been doing this pre-election survey since 2016. And our main focus for this pre-election survey is to measure the political atmosphere in the country. And so we usually do this to identify the early warning signals going into the elections, to know the preparedness of the various institutions mandated to run the elections, and again know the level of confidence citizens have, their fears, their concerns, so that we can address them before we go into the elections. So our main focus is to identify issues of concern so that we can find solutions to those issues before we enter into the elections. So
this focuses on the electorate, not the institutions per se, is that it?
I think it's encompassing. It focuses on the electorate, it focuses on the institutions. So you want to know the feedback of Ghanaians and their perceptions towards the institutions their fears. And through that, you get citizens to assess some of these institutions and also express their concerns in terms of how ready these institutions are and the fears that these institutions may be in the position to address.
So you did not necessarily talk to the institutions that you seek the views of Ghanaians about, for instance, the Electoral Commission, the police, the NCC and co. You don't necessarily talk to them when you are conducting research.
No, we don't talk to the institutions. We talk to the general populace. So Ghanaians are the center of the pre-election survey.
All right. Now, let's talk about the numbers for this year's own. I know in 2016 you did one with, I think the one that was in July or so, you used a sample size of about 2,400. Then that one, that was I think in October, the sample size was lesser than that of the July one. 2020, you're using a sample size of 2,400 as against a population of about, let's say, 32 million or so. I think in 2016, we're around, let's say, 28 point something million. And so I'm trying to understand what informs the sample size you choose to use for such surveys.
Okay, so in actual fact, in 2016, in July, we oversampled. So it was more than the 2,400.
Okay.
We did around 2,600, less than 2,700.
Okay.
That is what we did in July. In October, we came back to the 2,400. And this 2,400 is not only for this pre-election survey. In fact, if you look at Afrobarometer and the surveys that they conduct, they use similar sample size. That is 2,400. That's what they use. And we have repeated the same 2,400 sample size for the 2020 pre-election survey. And in fact, the focus is not on the 30 million maybe projected value. It's on the adult, the population of adults. So if you look at the 2019 Ghana Statistical Service, their projections for the adult population is around 17,187,867.
Okay, take that number again for me.
So 17,187,867.
That's for 2020.
That's for 2019. The Ghana Statistical Service projections for the adult population.
Okay.
So our focus here is the adult population.
And in 2016 it was what figure?
I can't give you the 2015
but invariably it would have increased from if we're looking at the adult, obviously it would have increased.
Certainly.
So let's work with a figure of, let's say, 50 million. Okay. Let's say work with a figure of 50 million. So that there's been a 2 million addition to the figure. And then proceed so that I can ask you the question.
This, when you are considering the sample size, I think we should focus on the adult population and not the entire 30 million population. So that's the point of emphasis.
So what informs the choice of the figure 2,400 and not, let's say, 3,000 or 4,000? What informs that figure?
Okay, so basically, you know, apart from the Ghana Statistical Service, which every decade they go and then they do the census. In fact, you don't have many organizations talking to Ghanaians using that large figure discussing. I think you may have the demographic survey, which is also conducted by government. But as a private entity, when you are conducting some of these surveys, you think about the funding, the time, and also the quality controls you have to put in to generate your report. So with the limited funding available, we have stuck to the 2,400, and the 2,400 gives us a sample size that can be, I mean, if you use the 2,400 sample size that we are talking about, you can get findings that you can generalize. It's a representative sample of the Ghanaian adult population, and that is why we stick to the 2,400. Forgive
my lack of appreciation of statistics, but would it not make sense for us to work with the logic that in 2016, if you did a sampling with a size of 2,400, let's use your population number of 70 million, the adult population of 70 million, and that hypothetically we're working around 50 million in 2016. Obviously, with the number increasing, you would have to make room for that increment, not so?
Well, so with a simple common sense approach, it makes sense. But those in the statistics field, those who have done these statistics, they will tell you there is a relationship between the margin of error and the sample size calculation.
So that plus 1, that plus 2 minus 2, what does it translate into in terms of figures?
So the plus 2 minus 2, so the 2,400 sample size that we are using, when we do the random sampling and the approaches that we use, we are able to have a result that is 95% confidence level, and that means the plus or minus 2 margin of error. What the plus or minus 2 margin of error means is that if you want to do the same sample size, let's say what we did, the pre-election survey we did, is sample size A. If you want to do B, C, D up to 100 times, in 95% of those surveys that you conduct, using the same sample, talking to maybe different group of people, but with the same sample size, in 95% of those 100 different surveys that you conduct, you will have responses that are within the range of plus 2 or minus 2. So let me give you an example. When we ask people to tell us the direction of the country, and if you have, let's say, 30% of the people that we spoke to telling us that the direction of the country is going in the wrong direction or is going in the right direction, with this margin of error, when you go out to repeat this research over 100 times, what it means that in 95% of the cases, you will get responses that are either plus 2 of the 30 or minus 2. So technically... But
that should come with a threshold. That plus 2 minus 2 must come with a threshold. But before you proceed, I think that's why Doc is here. Dr. Seydou, help us to have a better pictorial understanding of what we are talking about. A sample size of 2,400. Now, this is my layman's understanding. It may be wrong, it may be right, but I'm thinking that if you sample us here, there are about 3 people in the studio. The next time you want to do another sampling, and about 6 of us in the studio, would the same sample size work?
Okay. Good evening to your viewers, Sammy. Let me come in here. You know, the 17 million adult population is consistent with the Electoral Commissioner's current 2020 registered number of people on the voter list. The point is, all these are empirical formulas, so you have to go in. It's basically the Slovenes formula they are using. I think there is no idea of confidence interval here. This is simple. You are coming here, you are saying it's a trade-off between precision and size. If you want high precision, you go for high precision, higher size. Low precision, you take lower size. So what happens with their 2,400, it translates into a margin of error of around 2. A margin of error of around 2. If you use the 17 million to calculate, it's around 2.4% margin of error. And that means that that is a acceptable bound of error. If you use that sample size to do your research. I think what they are getting, and of course with that sample size you don't need to correct for finite population because whatever you calculate there would be less than 10% of the entire adult population supposedly they are using. But what they are not getting correct here is the kind of analysis they are doing with the data. If you do such kind of calculations, then you have to do an inferential analysis, not descriptives. If you want to go for descriptives and say that, okay, I went and this number of Ghanaians said this number of Ghanaians said that, then you need at least 10% of your populace to be able to do that. So one would ask, what empirical statistical techniques have they actually used in any of these? They have basically kept on giving us descriptives, one table, 40% said this, 30% said this. And in such calculations, you have to go deep by taking more of your populace. You should at least represent more than 10% of your target population before you can go ahead with such basic descriptives. So you will be looking for, so somebody like me, if I read a report, I'm looking for what kind of statistical tests have they done. Is there any test of proportions? Are they chi-square tests of independence? Are they correspondence analysis? Have they done any of these things to come out with these authoritative findings? None. If you flip, it's more of percentages. So that's where they are. I think they are moving away.
Now, let's stay a little longer on the issue you're raising about qualitative and then precision. The size and precision. So in terms of looking for precision, from the point of view of a statistician, if you're working with a population, let's work with the total population, because you see, it's not everyone who may get a better appreciation and grasp over the issue of the 17 million adult population we are talking about. Now, if we're working with, let's say, a population of 30 million, and then you want to have qualitative work where you can precisely say that this is what we gathered on the ground. What numbers do you look at in order, what indices do you use to say that, okay, we are working with a sample rate of, let's say, 8,000, let's say 5,000. What do you look at?
Okay, let me help you out here. And so simple, let's stand at the 17 million.
Okay.
If they wanted 1% precision, then they should have used 9,994.
If they were looking for 1% precision.
That's margin of error.
Okay.
That is margin of error.
Okay.
So 99% precision. If they wanted 2%, then they should have used around 2,500. Okay. So you see, their figure is around that. Around 2.04. Yeah. If they want maybe exactly 2.04, is giving them 267. Okay. The point here is that if you pick more sample size, it's not wrong. You see, the more the sample size, the better the outcome. So then we don't have an idea like oversampling. It's a trade-off between cost and precision. You put more money, you get high precision. You put less money, because each sample size will give you cost. But then if you use 2.3%, you can take maybe 1,890, and 2.5% margin of error 1,600. If you are doing some of these things, then there should be an empirical statistical text that you are going to use to do the inference. You understand? But if you are just going out like polls, then you have to interview a lot of people, because then this time, whatever you are going to do wouldn't have any empirical basis. You are just going to tell us what people think, and you have to interview at least more than 10% of your people.
Help me again. That my layman's talk about a size of 15 million, hypothetically, increasing to 17 million for 2020. So let's say between 2016 and 2020, it's shot up by 2 million people who have been added to the adult population. Okay. Should this figure you are giving me, that 2% error of margin, should it still be applicable if we use the same in 2016? Yeah. And then we are using the same for 2020.
Of course, no. So if you are taking 15 million and you are using 2,400, ideally the 17 million is in the neighborhood of, it corresponds to the 2,400. It's in the neighborhood. Yeah. So supposing you go to 30 million, you can't still stay there. If you want that same margin of error, if the margin of error remains constant, then it means the sample size will go high. You have to. It's just, these are deterministic stuffs. It's not. You just, once this one, the population size goes up, then technically your margin of error remains constant, the sample size has to go up. They are deterministic.
Right. Let me give you the opportunity, because he feels that if you are, from his view, it is not really so much of a precision-based, job you have done, but it's virtually like a sampling of polls, perceptions of people, if I get you, not statistically based. How do you respond to that?
Well, I don't think that is how I understood his point.
Okay, so
he's only talking about precision and then the sampling size.
Okay.
So if you want to add more to the precision, you increase the sample size.
Yeah.
But Doc will agree with me that when you are talking about this margin of error and sample size, sometimes, okay, for the sake of even cost, sometimes you increase your sample size to the point that even if you increase your sample size at many times, you won't get, the precision doesn't really improve. So if you have 2,400 and you want to, let's say, make it 4,000, okay, you also have to consider how much precision are you adding to your work, and is it worth the cost? And even aside these things, we are being very practical here. You want to conduct a survey, you are thinking about the cost, you are thinking about the time. Again, there are other issues about non-sampling errors, and these are very critical. So if you are caught in between this scenario of thinking about cost and precision, and again the possibility of non-sampling error, then you have to play a very fine line between balancing the cost and precision. And as he stated earlier, the 2,400 that you have a margin of error of plus 2.4 thereabout, and plus or minus. And that is statistically correct, you know, if you want to do a social science survey like what we have done. Okay, so that one must be stated. And again, coming back to the non-sampling error, if you want to increase your sample size to 4,500, there are issues about quality control. And even the non-sampling error are those ones that you can't even measure. You can't even measure like we are able to measure these ones and say it is plus or minus.
In that regard, what was the sampling methodology, survey methodology you used, so that one we can at least get our listeners and our viewers to appreciate?
Well, so we work closely with the Ghana Statistical Service when we are doing
your field work.
So well, I wanted to give you an idea from how we even go to the field. We work with the enumeration areas, and these ones are selected by the Ghana Statistical Service. So before you go to the field, these things are already predetermined. And we make sure that we have the population of the various regions reflect in our sample size. So let me give an example. Greater Accra, let's say the adult population of Greater Accra to the national population is 10%. It means our 2,400, which is our sample size, you are going to have 10% from it going to Greater Accra. And we also do disaggregation by urban and the rural proportions of the population in the various regions. So we do this throughout all the regions. Before they go to the field, all these enumeration areas are predetermined. They are done statistically. They run through the various control mechanisms at the Ghana Statistical Service, because they have all the enumeration areas and they won't give it to you. So they assist you to select all these things, and they are done randomly. When you go to the field, you know where you are going to, your enumeration area, which is determined. You have a map, and then you are supposed to map the area and know this is where you are operating. So in order to first avoid bias in the selection process and ensure randomization in selection of the respondents, we usually adopt a working pattern, very systematic. Over there, there is a movement. You go to an enumeration area, you have a number of people, they have their supervisors. They are supposed to move in different directions, let's say north, south, east, west. And there is a counting pattern. Let's say, I'm giving you an example. You count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and wherever it falls on your hand for the building to your right, let's say that is where you are going to enter. When you enter into the building, you identify the household. If there are more than one household, you are going to use randomization, simple randomization techniques. But
do you take into consideration voting patterns in these areas from the previous elections that has been done? Do you take into consideration these voting patterns when you're going to these regions?
No, as I stated earlier, these things are done through a random process. So we don't do purposive selection of our enumeration areas.
So is it therefore not possible that one particular area may have the dominance of a certain political party, and so the feedback you're going to get from that particular area is going to skew your outcome in favor of a certain output, or let's say outcome?
Not necessarily. So if you even want to look at our survey demographics, you will see they match the national demographics. If you want to see our survey demographics, in terms of the regional breakdown of the adult population per regions, and from our survey distribution per adult population, that is one key thing. If you want to see the gender, the age, so we basically look at the urban rural dynamics. That is one key thing that we determine. But apart from that, the rest are done randomly, and the outcome as I have it here. And the other intentional thing that we do is gender alternation. These things are done intentionally. When you speak to a male, the next one must be a female. These things are done intentionally. But apart from that, the rest are done through a randomization process. And if you look at our figures here and you compare it to the national demographics, they reflect. And the difference is not much. And again, so because our focus is not to predict who wins election, you shouldn't be thinking about, you go here and you talk to, let's say, this political party favorite, you talk to this political, but how do you capture even the other demographics?
Okay.
If you want to consider that.
All right, we will come back and, you know, delve deeper into these areas, because it is these technicalities that make it difficult for people to appreciate the conversation when it comes to the outcome of your report which you put out there. And so in that respect, when we come, we'll take a look at the demographics properly.
Okay.
And then now we'll come back to the main issue of, you know, the concerns about the performance, the trust in the security agencies and co. But I think that it's important that we, you know, get people to understand the processes leading to the outcome which we have today. And so we'll take a very short breather. You are watching Fact Sheet live on e.TVGhana. It's also live on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Our handle is e.TVGhana, but on Twitter is e.TV_Ghana. You can follow the conversation. My guests are here with me, and we're interrogating the CDD's pre-election report, which they released recently about a week ago. We'll be back. Good evening. Welcome back to the Fact Sheet live on e.TVGhana. Here, if it's not a fact, we don't discuss it. And my guests are with me. We are interrogating the CDD's recent report, which highlights key issues that, you know, we must pay attention to. But we are trying to break down the conversation about the processes leading to the outcome of this survey. And so my guests are with me that we are discussing the issues. Now, quickly before we went for that break, within a short time, I want to understand the demographics that you were giving us, because there's a bit that I can't get. If you look at, for instance, the 2016 one, I need you to help me appreciate the numbers. If you compare the 2016 one, Doc, can I borrow your document for a second? If you compare the 2016 one to the 2021, and go for it, please help me. Now, in the 2021, you say that the pre-election survey distribution for Western Region, Western North, Central, Greater Accra. For Western Region, the survey distribution was 9.7 for 2016. The percentage was 9.7%. And then in 2020, it is 7.0. Then if you check in terms of the national distribution of adult population, here in 2016, it was 9.5. 2016, it's 9.5. But in 2019, it's 7.0. Now, if you check the Central Region, the survey distribution was 8.7%. The same Central Region in 2016 is 8.3, as compared to this year's 2019's own, which is around 8.0, and then in 2016, rather, it was 8.7%. So in the 2016 one, you find the figures much higher compared to 2021. I'm trying to, you know, get them to sync.
I'm trying to.
Okay, all right. So these are this is the report, the 2016 report of the CDD. Okay. Now the demographic information you gave to Ghanaians in 2016 was that in the Western Region, per your survey, you looked at a distribution of about 9.7%.
Okay.
This was in 2016.
Okay.
But in 2020, where per the previous conversation we have had, in terms of the numbers increasing, it was around 7, it is around 7.0 in terms of the distribution. Here, your own report. And then in 2019, you say that the projected adult population distribution is 7.0. But in 2016, it was 9.5%. So I'm trying to understand what this means, because I am thinking that these figures should rather have gone up. Or, Doc.
Yeah, let me. Okay, sorry.
I'm trying to.
You're trying to. Okay, let me give you the document, so that you can help me, because I've been trying to wrap my mind around it, and I can't really figure out how.
You see, the whole idea, what is happening is that, so my brother should have talked about the techniques they were using even in sampling in the first place. If you read their report, they are actually doing a two-stage sampling. They are doing stratification with proportional allocation to size. Then they are doing simple random sampling in there. Yeah, so that's exactly what they are doing. So the allocation is with respect to the size of the population. Remember, when you are talking about size of a population, if you go to Legon, for instance, you would have people that are coming into the adult population and people that are leaving the adult population. And so based on the size of the population at the time they were doing, you calculate. So if Legon is bigger than Nima, then you expect more allocation to Legon when you are going into sample than Nima. And that's exactly what they were doing.
But should we rather be seeing a decline in terms of the numbers, considering the population growth?
Yeah, so that is what is happening. If you look at the techniques, currently, that's the technique they are using. If there is any decline, it depends upon the sample size they were using in any particular year and how the allocation was done.
All right, so Gilford, in that respect, help us to understand these numbers.
So I think a simple way to understand it is to match the survey distribution and the national distribution of adult population at a particular point in time. And I think if you, Doc actually got it right. I mean, he explained it rightly. So in 2016, we are saying that if you look at the Western region, the national distribution of adult population for Western region was 9.5.
Okay.
And our survey, our distribution per the adult population was 9.7. So you are talking about coming to 2020, and then you see the adult population reducing, and you think it should be increasing. And I think he made a point. There are movements.
No, but you should be telling us, not a point he made. You are the ones who did the research.
So I'm just buttressing the point. I mean, he has given you that explanation. I'm just saying.
That is from his professional view. He may not necessarily, he's conjecturing. He may not necessarily know the, methodology you used in arriving at these conclusions.
Okay, so
so that's why I want
So let me help. So the point is, if you want to have a very good understanding or a good picture of what we are doing here, anytime you pick the national distribution of adult population per region, and that one is not the work that CDD does. We don't do that. We get that information from Ghana Statistical Service. So they make their projections based on the movement in and out. So it is possible the adult population in a particular region is higher this time, and next year it may reduce. It's the same thing. So if you have followed the Electoral Commission and the registration of adult voters, you will see some regions have gained, others have lost. So it doesn't automatically mean that as the year goes by, the region's population of the adult population increases. Some may lose, and even may lose very drastically, depending on so many other factors. So the point of interest here should be comparing the survey distribution to the adult population at a particular point in time. But we cannot assume that because it is 9 this year, the following 2 years or 3 years, it should be 10. No, it may reduce. So that's how we should consider it.
Doc, I was making a point earlier that I need your, expertise on. The point about the possibility of a skewed outcome per the distribution of electoral patterns in this country. Is that possible?
Yeah, that's
per their methodology?
That's highly feasible, and that's one of the problems we see with this report. Technically speaking, the problem here is they didn't describe well the stratification variable. When you're doing stratification, there should be a variable on which your populace or the people you are going to have common thinking about. So you are going to ask about COVID-19. These people in this locality, do they have common thinking about COVID-19? Then you go to homogeneity. That's what we call the homogeneity. You go there, you're talking about development projects. Do they have the same road networks? Would they speak in the same mind? And so they've not defined their stratification variable well. So there is a high possibility that you go into a locality and you might find only MPP people or only one, say, political party B people speaking to the issues. And this is some of the technical the problems you turn out to find. To resolve some problems like that, certain questions should have been kept in the questionnaires to target swing voters. You put a question that to help you identify whether the person you are speaking to actually vote for different political parties in different election years. And those people's views should matter most than fanatics. Somebody who would vote for political party A every time would definitely tell you something that doesn't go in favor of the other political parties. And so they should have kept questions that would check those things. And those analysis of those people's views would have been ideal here. Then one other thing is that they should have gone to general places like the banks where people walk in randomly, churches, marketplaces, not localities. It's likely people in a particular locality might have some specific political parties based on what they see, the kind of development they have in those localities. So it's better to go to social places than just the houses with the kind of questions they sought to answer. And so it's not surprising. You might be interviewing people and it's not that random enough. And looking at the party news, I don't know whether they were doing systematic sampling or what. He said they count 5 houses to the left and 5 houses to the right. And so the challenges you tend to have with that kind of sampling are what we're talking about. Because at the end of the day, they are bound to happen. And he rightly talked about sampling errors and non-sampling errors. They will come. But then you have to control them. They can't be avoided. You find ways to control them. And ways to control them is to be able to make sure your questions, the questionnaires come in unbiased and they are targeting the right people. Okay, so if I'm a swing voter and I come in and I say, okay, I voted for political party A this year, I voted for the subsequent year and that, and I'm telling you currently a government is doing better or not, you kind of understand me. But if I'm a fanatic, I'm voting for political party A every year, I'm voting, I mean, you don't expect me to say any good thing about the other political party, and it's obvious. And some of those things would make the findings not too accurate.
All right, go for it. Let me ask one question before we shift to... But quickly before that, I want to have an understanding, because I see that you make a deliberate effort in your report to consciously tell us about the issues that were dominating discussions, let's say, in the media space around that time. What's the essence of that, and how does it reflect in the outcome of your, how do you call it, your report?
Can I?
So you can box the two together quickly.
So let me touch on a few things that Doc has mentioned. So I think I told you at a point we do systematic, and that is why we do the counting. So we randomize, but what I disagree with Doc about going to some popular places like banks, and you are doing purposive sampling here. But what we seek to do, and again, I don't think we should be having a particular focus like who people are going to vote for. I haven't mentioned that. I mean, it's part of.
But ultimately,
that's
the outcome.
It's part of it.
Yeah.
The process is more important to us. The process that leads to the outcome. If things go wrong, you may not even get the outcome that you want. So that is why I'm saying we try to get the warning signals and all the other things that are not working right before we get into the elections. And if you want to do that random sampling, and I told you the technicalities that we initiate, we work with EAs, and you have to select them randomly. These are done by the Ghana Statistical Service. So once you begin to identify, let me go here, let me go there, it becomes very complicated. And you are not even giving each adult the equal chance of being, the equal chance of participating in your research. And that's the point. So
I see Doc is shaking his head.
I think he's talking. No, I'm coming.
No, that is not purposive sampling. What you just explained is not. When we say purposive sampling, you selecting, you having a judgment over who to be included. If I go to the marketplace, who comes in there, I don't decide. Purposive is saying that I need only bankers because my question I'm asking pertains to banking. That's purposive. But if I go to the banking square and I'm there, I mean, anybody that comes in, whether he's a lawyer, whether he comes in randomly, I pick him. If I go to marketplaces, I'm picking anybody that walks into the market. That's not purposive. You know why we are saying this is that if you walk into Bantima, of course, in a particular locality, you might be finding people in the same political party, and it will defeat the purpose of what you are doing. And that's how come we said you should put a question that seeks to segregate this. If fanatics from swing voters, when you are doing election prediction, it's not about those that actually vote for one political party that we need. What makes the decision is the swing voters. Technically speaking, they have bases, and there are fluctuations over the time, and these fluctuations are caused by swing voters. And so the ordinary Ghanaian who is not stereotyped or who is not glued to any political party, what does he think about this government?
Indulge me. Would it therefore make sense, between the three of us, would it therefore make sense to say that in the CDD's effort at arriving at a neutral position in terms of its outcome, it would rather make sense for them to focus on the swing regions?
No.
Would it make sense to say that?
Let me say something here before maybe Doc comes. So if you want to know one level of stratification, basically it's the regional level. So if you are talking even about the swing regions and whatever, and that is why we are saying we distribute our sample based on the national adult population per the regions. So if you're talking about the adult population, okay, in Western region, swing in Central, in Greater Accra, we have the same proportion here in our survey. So we have similar proportions in the swing regions in our survey, and similar proportions of the strongholds in our survey. So the proportion of adult population in Ashanti region reflects in our survey. The same thing in Volta region reflects in our survey. The same thing in the swing regions that we are talking about, whether it is Greater Accra. So if you have more people in Greater Accra and it is swing regions, your adult population proportion in Greater Accra will reflect in your survey. So you have a fair balance from all the regions, and I think that is how to get, this understanding that I'm talking about.
You still want to say something? Yeah.
Let me just direct him. The regions are not necessarily structums or strata. Various regions are not strata. When you're talking about classifying a stratum, you need a stratification variable because you need homogeneity in a stratum. So a region can be a cluster based on a particular object of interest. So whatever you are discussing would make those people in there heterogeneous or homogeneous. So if I'm talking about developmental projects, because we stay in the same locality, we see the same developmental projects in the locality. And therefore, we can be kept in one stratum. But then if I'm talking about, say, views towards some social policy or something, because we come from various political divides, various ethnic backgrounds, various religious backgrounds and everything, we can be kept in a structure in the same region. We can call that a cluster. You understand me? So it's very important to define your stratification variable. That will make people in a stratum common, or that will make people in a cluster heterogeneous. Then another thing about this thing, you see, some of your questions, you need the varied general view of the populace you were using, the target population. Some of the questions, technically, if you put a question there and you want to see how the current government is doing on COVID-19, you have to be careful. Technically, the average Ghanaian, somebody who is not biased to political party A or B, will tell you holistic or objective views. But somebody who is stereotype or a fanatic wouldn't see any good thing in what the current government is doing, or would see everything excellent in what the current government is doing. That's why we're saying that for some of the questions, you should have gotten a control kind of thing in your questionnaire, something that, and technically that wouldn't have hurt you, because if you put it in there, you analyze those people and you see that it will give you an objective view. If the person is voting for political party A today, political party B, there would be a reason, and that's how come we were recommending correspondence analysis. You put party A here, party B here, and you see which factors aggregate to that party A. You will see that for party A, ethnic sentiments are moving to him. Party B, maybe religion. Party C, you will see maybe infrastructure. Party, you see education. And so you see that, people that actually vote for this political party go there because of health. Go there because they think their education policies are good. Go there because they think maybe people that go here maybe goes there because they are thinking of their ethnic sentiment, those kind of things.
We would have to go for a short break. When we come back, I think we have some 10 minutes to try and at least we've been able to give people an understanding of the processes, because that's the center of controversy when it comes to the outcome of the CDD report. Because I see the political parties and other civil society organizations and individuals on social media, bantering the outcome of the CDD report. And so if we're able to get some of these things out of the way, then it makes easy assimilating the content of your report. We are taking a short breather. You're still watching us live on e.TVGhana. This is Fact Sheet. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We have 8 minutes before the show comes to an end, and my guests this evening, it's been my brother from CDD, girlfriend, who's been helping us with the content that they put out there for us to have a better appreciation as to what went into, the processes leading to, the outcomes that we received. And so, moving on, there's just a final question I want us to see if we can deal with it. Can the questions that surveys ask determine a particular outcome? Look.
Yeah, exactly. The questions you put in a survey will determine a particular outcome. And so he actually talked about some, we have sampling bias, we have questions that are, what do you call it, that are directed or leading kind of questions. So if you look at their report, in the summary, they actually wrote that they actually transcribed the report into various dialects. And there would be some form of errors also there. But those are things that we can accommodate in surveys, because technically if you're moving something from English to Chi, the diction, the kind of things you're going to use there might not actually purport exactly what you want to put in English. We put questions can be leading, but we look at all these things. That's how come you pretest the questionnaires and make sure that whatever response they're actually giving to you is exactly what you want, or there is that kind of reliability in with your questionnaire as far as the data collections are concerned. So it's possible.
But do you go out there with an idea, an outcome you're looking for?
Yeah, so we say, if I go out there, I put a question out. You want people to respond to that particular question, maybe in a positive direction or negative. But you know, the question is taxing the memory of the question, the respondent, and he's actually giving an answer that is not in your class of expectations. Then it tells you they are not getting the question well. So you do those kind of pre-tests, make sure the question, or maybe you put a question there and almost everybody is saying yes to the question, yes to the question, yes. Technically, you might want to assess whether your question is not leading. You're leading in a way that makes the person thinks, okay, I have just to say yes for the want of not trying to maybe put myself in this light or something. So you put the question in a neutral way and assess the person's thinking about the question.
Going through the CDD's report, did you have a cause to be concerned in any way, some of the questions they pose to people?
You see, in general, my concern is, one, the kind of sampling they did. They were supposed to do an empirical statistical test to come out with the findings they were. Their findings were too authoritative. So if you don't back them with an empirical statistical test from the sample size you use, then it becomes problematic. If you want to go out for polls, go out for a lot of people. We are not saying go do census. You are doing sample survey, but pick enough views. Okay? Because if you want to just do descriptives, these people say yes, these people say no, then pick as much as more than 10% of your target population. But you pick so less, around 3%, 0.03% of your target population, and you don't do any empirical statistical tests, and you make conclusions like Ghanaians think maybe this party A is doing well or party B is not, then it's problematic. And that's some of the challenges I have with it. And I have with the report I'm seeing. But all said, the sampling technique they used, we are not saying it's wrong. It's okay. You can do that. But at least they could have used some empirical statistical techniques to emphasize or maybe support or buttress some of the descriptives they were seeing in there. And that is a drawback of the report I have seen so far.
All right, so let me sum up the conversation with you, Wilfred, and ask. In terms of funding for these projects, do you determine to the funding agency that, look, because of the numbers, it would be prudent, you know, we increase our size from our sample size from this number to this number? Do you make those recommendations to them?
Well, I mean, funding generally is a big challenge, and is the reason why in our part of the world you don't have many people doing that kind of large-scale research. So that real challenge is there, and it's a hindrance. But if you have that situation, how best can you balance your cost with precision? And I mean, what Doc may say may be empirically, I'm not too sound statistically as you say, but the 2,400 gives you a nationally representative sample. And if you want to, you can do more sample. And in fact, as I told you earlier, in 2016, we oversample certain areas. Because if you want to do the analysis beyond the national level, focus maybe on constituency and try to identify certain key issues, that sample at those levels will not give you that, you know, I mean, you can't generalize even at a constituency level based on that sample. But nationally, as we have been doing, the 2,400 gives us a nationally representative sample that we believe we can say Ghanaians are saying this from the sample that we have, because nationally it is representative. So I think that is how best you can balance your cost and precision of plus 2.4 or minus 2.4, which is very correct.
Very quickly about that.
All right. So I asked the final question. What do we do then with the results? Doc, under 1 minute. Under 1 minute.
So CDD, you have challenge with funding, making trade-off with cost precision. What we are saying is it wouldn't cost you to do an empirical statistical test. You have the data, speak to it, do crosstabs, do chi-square test of independence, do correspondence analysis, do test of proportions. Come out and say that we can say with 5% level of significance, at 95% level of confidence level, that this is the point. So 95% of the time, Ghanaians are saying this. But with what you have just done, you've just said, how significant are these values? They are just descriptives. And so we are not saying go and pick more people. With the little you have, which is representative of the population, go further and do an empirical statistical test. Then when you do the test, you can see, because statistically 2 can be equal to 3. Statistically 4 can be equal to 5. But then if you give it to a lame person, he will think they are different. So go further and do that, because you are making authoritative. Ghanaians say voter populations are the Ghanaians says this. Making great inference. And if you are making inference, then the estimated or your point estimate should be able to infer the population parameters. And these population parameters as we are talking about, it's only empirical statistical test that you can use to arrive at some of these decisions you make.
Look, for want of time, let me hand over the last
So I think, I mean, before you even pick the survey, we have stated the parameters. We're saying everything that you find here is plus or minus 2. And you see, all of us also have bet our minds to the fact that these are practical stuff. We are not doing rigorous academic stuff. So if you are presenting your findings to the populace, if you are communicating with the media, if you are communicating with policymakers, you probably, sometimes going into deep to make some of these analysis, correspondence, and whatever may not even make sense to them. How best do you communicate to them? If you want to do the analysis, I mean, the data is there, you can still do the analysis. You can still run everything that you are talking about. Some of the questions that you even raised, if you go through the questionnaire, you have all those questions to check where people belongs to, whatever bias that they have. You can do all those things. But we are presenting to you the general findings, the important highlights that we think going into the elections really, really makes sense, and we all can try and then find and resolve some of the issues before we get into the elections. So I think that is how we put it, and that is how we present our findings to the public.
I'd like to thank you, Gilfred, for your final submission. On that note, we'd like to thank our guests this evening. Dr. Louis Asiedu is a senior lecturer, Department of Statistics and Actuarial Science, University of Ghana, Legon. Gilfred Boating Esiama is research analyst at the Ghana Center for Democratic Development, Accra, Ghana, joining us in the studio to, make sense of the CDD's recent, pre-election survey, which has generated a lot of conversation in the media space, concerns being raised about it. And I hope and do pray that with your sheets, with me this evening, we're able to deal with the facts for you to understand what the processes and methodology brought in terms of the report. My name is Samuel Ichan, production support, my able producer, Sifa Dankwa, and then my director, John Kuma, and the rest of the crew. I would like to thank you for being a part of the show this evening. For those of you who are watching us live on Facebook who sent comments, we sincerely apologize for our inability to read your comments this evening. But next week, Tuesday, do make a date. But there's a repeat of the show, God willing, tomorrow at 10 a.m. But don't miss the Happy Morning Show tomorrow morning at exactly 5:30 a.m. I'll be in the seat. God bless.